In the heart of India, where dreams rise from narrow streets and modest homes, lived a young woman with a quiet fire. She wasn't a celebrity. She didn't crave attention. She studied hard, loved her family deeply, and believed, like so many daughters do, that dedication and discipline could change her future. And they did. Until one moment, one act, changed everything. It happened in broad daylight, in a city of millions, at a train station filled with strangers. She was just beginning the next chapter of her life, but someone else had already written a different ending. This is not just the story of what was done to her, it's the story of who she was, and what her journey revealed about the world around us. Because when the light of a life is so cruelly dimmed, the shadows it leaves behind demand to be seen. This is the story of Sonal Rajput. Welcome to the crime series. I am glad to have you join us on another video. Kindly subscribe, like, and share. Let me know where you're watching from. She grew up in the narrow but hopeful streets of Naval, a small town nestled on the fringes of Delhi, a place where electricity cuts were routine, water came in buckets, and ambition often battled daily limitations. Yet somehow, in between all the noise and necessity, dreams still managed to grow. Sonal Rajput was the eldest of 4 siblings in a modest middle-class family. Her father, Mr. Virendra Rajput, worked as a field officer in a semi-government agricultural agency. Her mother, Meena Rajput, ran a small kiosk in the local market, a wooden stall wedged between a flower vendor and a chai shop, where she sold basic cosmetics, bindi packs, hair oils, and sanitary items. It didn't earn much, but it added to the monthly grocery budget, and she never came home empty-handed. The Rajputs weren't rich, but they were rich in something rarer: belief. Belief that girls could dream. Belief that daughters too could carry the weight of a family's hopes. And Sonal carried it well. In the neighborhood, she was known as quiet, determined, and unfailingly respectful. But at home, her personality had more layers. She was fiercely protective of her younger siblings, 2 brothers and a sister, often helping them with homework before returning to her own books. With her aging grandparents, she was patient and attentive. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her presence was calming, steady, like someone who had already seen her future and was walking steadily toward it. She studied under the dim light of a 60-watt bulb, surrounded by the clatter of utensils and market chatter. She borrowed books from seniors. She cut distractions out like a surgeon. While other girls her age were saving up for smartphones or earrings, Sonal saved for application forms and exam fees. She completed her schooling at Gov Girls Senior Secondary School, Naval, where her name was always among the top 5 on the result board. After graduation, she applied to nursing programs across Delhi and northern India, 8 applications in total. Some she never heard back from. Others she cleared, but financial constraints or logistics made it impossible to attend. Then came the letter. A crisp envelope bearing the emblem of the Indian Navy. She had been selected to join as a staff nurse at their hospital in Kolaba, Mumbai. It was more than just a job. It was stability, dignity, a future built on her own merit. For her father, it was a dream fulfilled. For her mother, it was proof that late nights and early mornings had meant something. The entire family gathered around that letter, rereading it as though it might vanish if they blinked. When the day finally came, May 2nd, 2013, they all accompanied her to the train station. Even her mother, who stayed back in Delhi to care for the younger children, made sure to come for that final send-off. But it was her father and aunt who boarded the train with her to Mumbai, helping her settle for the journey and preparing to hand her over to the naval accommodation staff upon arrival. Meena had wanted to go too, but the children were too young to leave behind, and the family couldn't afford to close the market stall for more than a day. So she kissed Sonal's forehead twice at the platform and whispered, "Call me as soon as you reach. Don't forget to eat." They were carrying more than luggage. They carried pride. They carried years of sacrifice, and they carried the fragile hope of what the future could become. They had no idea that on that very platform, jealousy had been waiting. The train to Mumbai was packed. Families, students, laborers, all tucked into berths with metal railings and faded curtains. For Sonal Rajput, it wasn't just a train ride. It was her crossing, between where she came from and where she was going. A new job, a new city, a life finally taking shape. They reached Bandra terminus early the next morning, May 2nd, 2013. The station was waking up. The steel platforms echoed with the clatter of trolleys and porters' calls. Announcements rang out over the speakers. Sonal stepped off the train with her luggage and a printed appointment letter tucked into the side pocket of her file folder. And then, a man stepped forward. He looked like he belonged there. A young man in his mid-20s, slim, average build, with a light beard and a navy blue cap pulled low over his forehead. He wore a plain gray shirt, freshly pressed, tucked into black trousers and a backpack slung over one shoulder. Eyes down. Purpose hidden beneath pretense. Nothing flashy, nothing alarming. The kind of outfit that blends in anywhere, from a train platform to a college corridor. But there was something else. A white handkerchief, neatly folded and tied from the bridge of his nose down to his chin, covering his mouth, hiding his expression, revealing only his eyes. It wasn't enough to raise suspicion in a crowd that had learned to ignore oddities. People had seen too many masks, dust, pollution, illness. It all looked the same now. But this wasn't about protection. This was about disguise, and he blended in. That was the point. His eyes, though, they didn't blink. They were cold, still, focused, like someone who had rehearsed this moment too many times in his mind. He moved with precision, like he had been watching from a distance, waiting for the exact second she would step off that train. No wasted motion, no hesitation. And when he saw her step off the train, tall, dressed modestly in a salwar suit, clutching a file folder with her job appointment letter inside, he moved. No one saw the bottle in his hand. Not at first. It was small, concealed under a folded newspaper, the kind used to carry milk. But what it carried wasn't white or nourishing. It was lethal. It was planned. He stepped closer. So close, he could have whispered. And then he called her name just once. Sonal. She turned instinctively. That half-second of recognition, was it familiarity, confusion, alarm? But there was no time to think, no time to run, no time to scream. In the next instant, he flung the contents of the bottle directly at her face. Sulfuric acid. The impact was immediate. Her skin sizzled, her eyes stung shut, her breath caught in her throat. Her mouth opened, but sound couldn't escape. Her body convulsed as the liquid tore through tissue, eating into her cheek, neck, chest, arms. The scent of flesh filled the air. She stumbled backward, arms flailing. Her father and aunt rushed to catch her, and in doing so, caught splashes of the acid too. Their hands blistered. Her aunt's dupatta caught fire from the chemical reaction. The crowd screamed. The attacker, gone, vanished into the chaos before anyone could stop him. No confrontation, no hesitation. Just a calculated exit. In the crowd, people froze, some too shocked to move, others unsure what they had just seen. A few ran to help. A porter shouted for water, a chai vendor dialed for an ambulance. But for Sonal Rajput, time had already split in two, before the burn, and after it. Sonal Rajput collapsed to the ground, her face unrecognizable, her breath shallow, her body trembling from chemical trauma. Bystanders screamed. Some stood frozen. Others ran in every direction. A few passengers tried pouring water on Sonal's face, a fatal mistake with sulfuric acid, which only made the pain worse. Her skin bubbled, blackened, peeled. The chemicals sank into her eyes, her mouth. She gasped, but no sound came out. Just air, just fear. A GRP constable, government railway police, arrived within minutes and radioed for emergency help. An auto rickshaw was flagged down. No time to wait for an ambulance. She was first rushed to a nearby private clinic in Bandra. But the moment the attending doctor saw her injuries, he shook his head. This is beyond us. Her pulse was weakening. Her oxygen level was crashing. Within the hour, she was referred to Messina Hospital, known for handling burn cases. There, doctors tried to stabilize her vitals, dress the wounds, and start pain management. The acid had damaged nearly 25% of her body, mostly concentrated on the face, neck, and chest. Her breathing was erratic. The acid had entered her respiratory tract, burning the lining of her throat and lungs. She was immediately moved to the ICU. Multiple rounds of debridement, the surgical removal of dead skin, were scheduled, but they were running out of time. She was then transferred to Bombay Hospital, one of the city's most advanced tertiary care facilities. The burns unit was ready. A team of burn surgeons, ENT specialists, pulmonologists, and ophthalmologists assembled. They intubated her, hooked her to oxygen, injected morphine to manage the pain. She drifted in and out of consciousness. By the end of the day, her face was wrapped in layers of gauze. Her eyes had swollen shut. Her lungs were working overtime. The attending physician, Dr. Niharika Bose, addressed the family. Her condition is critical. The acid has penetrated deep. Her trachea is compromised. We've prevented infection for now. But the next 48 hours are crucial. And I have to be honest, her vision is likely gone. If you found this story compelling and appreciate the way we bring real-life cases to you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue to uncover the truth and share these important stories. Like, share, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going. Outside the ward, her father sat in silence. Her aunt sobbed quietly into her dupatta. Meanwhile, police had launched an investigation. CCTV footage from Bandra terminus was pulled, witnesses were questioned, sketch artists were contacted, but the attacker had worn a cap and a mask. There was no clear image, no ID, no leads. But this wasn't random. Someone had called her name. He knew who she was, and that meant the motive wasn't far behind. When the news reached Meena Rajput, Sonal's mother, she collapsed to the floor. Her youngest child, only 6, clung to her leg, confused. Her teenage son stood frozen, trying to make sense of the words. Acid attack, critical condition, Bombay Hospital. The house fell into silence, except for the sounds of neighbors gathering outside, murmuring in disbelief. Sonal was known in their colony as the girl who made it. Respectful, reserved, always helping her siblings study, always home before dark. Her success was a badge of pride for the entire neighborhood. Now that pride was stained with horror. Some neighbors wept openly. Others formed prayer circles. A few marched to the local police post, demanding justice. But mostly, they waited. Waited for news, waited for answers. Waited to know why someone would do this. In the first week, Mumbai police detained a man seen loitering on the platform near the train just before the incident. His name was Rakesh Mahali. He matched a vague description. He was slim, wearing a cap and carrying a backpack. During the investigation, it was discovered that he was a 30-year-old technician from a nearby suburb. He had a minor criminal record, petty theft, and had previously been fined for public harassment. When questioned, he couldn't offer a clear reason for being at the terminus that morning. He had no valid train ticket. His vague responses raised suspicion. He was held for several days, questioned repeatedly. But no acid was found in his possession, no history of purchasing acid, and most importantly, he had no connection to Sonal. And CCTV footage eventually showed that he had exited the station 10 minutes before the attack took place. With no physical evidence, motive, or witness links, Rakesh was released. But the damage was done. The early misstep had cost investigators critical time. Meanwhile, the real attacker remained invisible. Sonal Rajput didn't die immediately. That was the cruelest part. She fought. For 30 days, she fought. With every strained breath, every stinging heartbeat, every painful second of waking. She endured what no one should. In just the first 2 weeks, she underwent 5 surgical interventions. Debridement to remove rotting tissue, skin grafts taken from her thighs, to attempt to cover facial wounds, a tracheotomy to allow her to breathe through a tube inserted in her neck, tube feeding, since the acid had destroyed her esophagus lining, corneal assessments, though it was confirmed she would never see again. Doctors described her case as one of the worst chemical burns they'd seen in years. But through it all, Sonal never gave up. Her father, Virendra, refused to leave her side. He sat for hours beside the bed, whispering stories from home, pretending nothing had changed. Her aunt helped with sponge baths, folded her bandages, combed her hair where it still grew. Her mother and siblings arrived a week later. shocked, devastated, speechless. The younger ones weren't allowed into the ICU, but her mother was. And when Meena Rajput saw her daughter for the first time, she collapsed in the hallway, wailing so loudly that even hospital staff stopped what they were doing. It wasn't just grief. It was helplessness. The kind only a mother can feel when she can't fix what's broken. On the evening of June 1st, 2013, exactly 1 month after the attack, Sonal's condition deteriorated. She had developed a severe respiratory infection, a common risk after such injuries. The acid had permanently scarred her lungs, and now even machines couldn't compensate. At 5:25 a.m., with her parents at her bedside, Sonal stopped breathing. The machines fell silent. The room, once crowded with beeping monitors and hopeful murmurs, was now just still. She was declared dead at Bombay Hospital, 1 month and 1 hour after arriving in Mumbai to start her new life. Her father didn't cry. He just held her hand, half skin, half bandage, and whispered, "We're proud of you, Beta. Always." Her mother refused to leave the hospital for hours. She sat in the hallway, clutching Sonal's slippers, unable to understand how a girl who had been so full of life could now be just a memory. The news reached Narela by afternoon. Shops closed early. Neighbors gathered in silence. Some placed candles near the gate of the Rajput home. A few women from the colony brought food, though no one touched it. The air was thick with mourning and rage. Because this wasn't just a tragedy. This was a theft of a future, of potential, of a daughter who never stopped trying. Even though she was no longer alive, Sonal's voice, faint, fleeting, refused to vanish. One of her closest friends from nursing school in Delhi, Deepika Saini, stepped forward. She told investigators that Sonal had once confided in her, quietly, carefully, that she was being harassed by a former neighbor in her colony, a man who had developed an unhealthy obsession with her. "She told me he proposed to her," Deepika said. She refused, politely but firmly. After that, he started following her, watching her come and go, making comments. The man's name? t0rture, 25, unemployed, living just a few houses down from the Rajput family in Narela. Sonal had never reported him. She didn't want to create tension in the neighborhood or bring shame to her family. She thought that by ignoring him, he'd eventually stop. He didn't. The case reopened, this time with urgency. Police reviewed train manifests, ticket bookings, and CCTV footage. They found a ticket purchased in Ankur's name for the same train Sonal had taken, but listed under a different coach. A clever move to avoid detection. His phone was tracked. Cell tower data placed him in Bandra the morning of the attack. His return ticket, booked less than 24 hours later. When officers arrived at his home in Narela, he looked surprised, then nervous. On January 17, 2014, he was arrested. He denied it at first, said he was at home, claimed it wasn't him. But the digital trail told a different story. Train logs, search history, tower locations, statements from neighbors who recalled him asking about Sonal's departure date. And then, he went quiet. The motive became undeniable. Revenge for rejection, rage at being ignored. Jealousy that a woman from his own street had gone further than he ever could. By the time the case went to trial, India was watching. The attack on Sonal Rajput had ignited national outrage. Her story was covered in newspapers, shared on social media, and echoed in protests, calling for stricter punishment for acid attacks. What had once been seen as personal disputes were now being recognized for what they really were: premeditated acts of gendered violence. And in a quiet courtroom in Mumbai, justice was about to be put to the test. The trial was held in a special women's court, designed to handle crimes related to women with speed and sensitivity. But this case carried more than legal weight. It carried the burden of proving that such crimes would not go unpunished. The accused, t0rture, stood in the dock. His appearance was unsettling. He didn't look like someone consumed by guilt. He didn't weep. He didn't avoid the crowd's eyes. He smiled, often, casually, almost smugly. Courtroom observers noted his nonchalant posture, the way he leaned back during witness testimonies, occasionally scribbling with a pen as if he were reviewing someone else's exam paper. He wore simple, clean clothes, no shackles, no shame. just a calm exterior that rattled everyone in the room. Even when the prosecution presented damning evidence, train logs, CCTV clips, cell phone data, acid purchase receipts, he didn't flinch. When he was asked why he did it, his response was cold and controlled. I didn't want to kill her. I only wanted to ruin her face. My parents, they kept comparing me to her. They always said, look at Sonal, look at what she's achieved. I just wanted her to stop being better than me. That confession stunned the courtroom. It wasn't just a crime of passion. It was a crime born of inferiority, wounded pride, and fragile masculinity. The prosecution's case, led by Special Public Prosecutor Jyoti Kulkarni, the case was airtight. CCTV footage showed Ankur exiting the train ahead of Sonal. Phone records placed him at Bandra terminus at the exact time of the attack. Witness testimony confirmed that Sonal had complained to a friend about Ankur's harassment. Purchase records from a hardware store in Delhi showed he had bought concentrated sulfuric acid just days before. Kulkarni called it an act of calculated cruelty. He did not just throw acid, she told the court. He stole her face, her future, and then he left her to die. The defense tried to argue diminished intent, claiming Ankur had never meant to kill her. But the extent of Sonal's injuries and her month-long suffering before death left no room for doubt. This wasn't negligence. This was murder. It had taken 3 years, dozens of hearings, and one life lost. But finally, on September 6, 2016, the courtroom fell silent as the judge prepared to deliver a decision that would make legal history. Ankur Tiwari stood at the dock, still defiant, still expressionless. Across the room, Sonal Rajput's parents sat in the front row. Her father with his hands folded tightly in his lap, her mother with eyes brimming but unblinking. And then the words came. The accused, Ankur Tiwari, is found guilty under sections 302 and 326A of the Indian Penal Code for the murder of Sonal Rajput and for voluntarily causing grievous hurt by use of acid. A moment of stillness, then whispers, then gasps. It wasn't over yet. The next day, September 7, 2016, the sentencing was announced. The courtroom filled again. Activists, journalists, and families from other victims of acid violence, all waiting to hear what justice would look like. The judge was firm. The crime was not only premeditated, it was brutal, inhuman, and symbolic of the rising gender-based violence against women. This court cannot ignore the horrifying nature of the offense, the judge said. This was not an attack out of rage, it was punishment, plotted and precise, for a woman who chose to succeed. And then history was made. The convict is sentenced to death. It was the first time in India that capital punishment was awarded in an acid attack case. Across the room, Sonal's father wept for the first time, not from grief, but release. Her mother covered her face and sobbed quietly. Justice wasn't a victory, but it was something. A signal that Sonal's story would not fade into silence. Even as the gavel came down, Ankur smiled, as though the trial had been a game, as though the courtroom was his stage. There was no apology, no tears, no shame. His defense team whispered beside him, stunned. Even the court officers hesitated. The reaction from Sonal's family was immediate. Her mother cried out, not from relief, but from rage. Her sobs echoed through the courtroom, forcing the judge to briefly pause. Her father stood up, his fists clenched, his face trembling, but said nothing. He didn't need to. The whole room had felt what that smile meant. He destroyed her, Meena whispered to a reporter afterward, and even in the end he felt no sorrow. Back home in Narela, the Rajputs were welcomed like warriors, but returned as survivors. Their home was filled with people, garlands, candles, and folded palms. Neighbors brought food, flowers, and small donations in Sonal's name. Some offered to paint a mural of her on the outer wall. Others said nothing, only nodded in solidarity. But when the doors closed, the family's grief unfolded in private. India had seen acid attacks before, but this changed the conversation. News channels debated late into the night. Social media trended her name. Hashtag surge justice for Sonal, stop acid violence, death for acid attackers. Women's groups marched in Mumbai and Delhi, calling for strict regulation of acid sales, stronger survivor support systems, and urgent legislative reform. Petitions gained thousands of signatures within hours, and across it all was one haunting image, a still of Ankur's smile in court, unapologetic, undeterred, proof that justice, even when served, still arrives late. If this story moved you, disturbed you, or opened your eyes, subscribe to our channel for more real-life crime documentaries and fictional stories inspired by true events. We uncover the darkest corners of human nature, so you can be more aware, more informed, and maybe even safer. Until next time, stay sharp, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something just isn't right.
In fact, the man has been held guilty for murder. This is a landmark judgment in more ways than one, because till just a few years ago, acid attacks were not treated as seriously as the consequences that the victims had to bear. Now, this 23-year-old girl had come to Mumbai with dreams in her eyes. She had got an entry into the Indian Navy as a nurse, and she was about to join it. When she landed here, when she got here to the Bandra terminus station, somebody tapped her on the shoulder. She turned around and acid was thrown at her by her neighbor. Ankur Panwar has now been held guilty of that. He's been held guilty of murder. Preeti Rathi, the 23-year-old, is no more, but her father hopes that he can be given the strictest punishment. The conviction and the quantum of sentencing will be heard tomorrow.